Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully, you've had your coffee break. And for those of you who are just joining us for the day, welcome to you as well. I have with me this morning Dr. Dane Buddo, Project Coordinator of the BCLME Plus project at the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, CRFM Secretariat. He is our guest speaker for today, and Dr. Buddo will be talking to us about innovations and opportunities for sustainable aquaculture and fisheries. So over to you, Dr. Buddo.
Thank you so much, Sania. Let me just go ahead and share my screen real quickly. You can just confirm that you're seeing my presentation there. That'll be great.
Yes, confirming that I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share just a little bit. This is a very short presentation, and though there are many innovation and opportunities for aquaculture and fisheries in the region, I'm going to be pretty much just touch on a few of these case studies, drawing in from some case studies from across the world as well, and how these can have a positive impact on the Eastern Caribbean region. Just as a brief overview, the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, as some of you may know, started in 2003 in Belize City, in Belize. It's an intergovernmental organization with the mission of promoting and facilitating the region's use of fisheries and other aquatic resources for economic, social benefits and the future population of the region. It consists of three bodies: the Ministerial Council, the Fisheries Forum, and the CRFM Secretariat. And of course, these are the members of the CRFM, spanning the entire region. The Blue Economy CLME Plus project, it's a project 1 year in terms of implementation, is promoting national blue economy priorities through the marine spatial planning in the Caribbean large marine ecosystem region. It's a pretty large project spanning 4 years, value of just over $47 million, with a portion of that in funding in cash from the GEF, the Global Environment Facility. The CRFM is the executing agency for this project, with the Development Bank of Latin America and Caribbean, the FAO being the GEF co-implementing agencies. And you can see the 6 countries that are present participating in this project right now: Belize, Jamaica, Panama, St. Lucia, Barbados, and Guyana. And just a quick point that though these countries are the participating countries, all the knowledge and the benefits of what we're doing under this project will be shared for the entire region. The components include marine spatial planning, strengthening marine protected areas, ecosystem approach to fisheries, sustainable seafood value chains, and of course, promoting regional cooperation and knowledge management. And you can talk about all of these aspects in respect to fisheries and aquaculture. So this project is extremely linked with the region's push to enhance fisheries and aquaculture for the future. I just want to take us back. Some of you may have seen this many times during our course of study. And this is graph of yield, of sustainable yield, this curve. And that yellow arrow represents that maximum sustainable yield. And it's a concept that, as fisheries managers, we always want to focus on. But we have to be careful about focusing too much on that tipping point. It's almost getting to that point where if you catch one more fish, you're likely to go into overfish or crashing that fishery status. You have to also remember this is also data driven. For much of the data, it's fishery dependent data, meaning that you've caught the fish and now you've made some estimations of what the stocks are like based on the amount of effort that you put out. So we have to be careful of that maximum sustainable yield that we're so desperately trying to get so close to without stepping over that cliff and getting over that overfished area. Unfortunately, we have made mistakes in the world, in the region as well. and overfished or depleted several fish stocks. Of course, with the negative impacts it has had on the economy and the social structures throughout our countries. The FAO put out a report in 2022 showing, the variations with capture fisheries and aquaculture, both inland and marine waters. I just wanted to focus a little bit on what happened in about 1990. You saw a slow increase in aquaculture. And at the same time, you saw almost like a leveling off of capture fisheries. Had some increases and decreases, but generally a leveling off in capture fisheries since the 1990s. But during that period of time, aquaculture boomed. It was mainly in the inland aquaculture aspects of things. Close to 2010, 2012, you saw an increase in marine aquaculture. And this is where we want to make sure that we're looking at for opportunities for investment. You're seeing the increase, you're seeing the production, and these are global figures. And it is definitely sad to say that Caribbean seeds represent a very tiny percentage of aquaculture development globally, with the larger countries making more rapid progress. So there is the need for targeted solutions and investments, and these actions have to have the support that we require and have to be clearly defined and enunciated. We've had many, small projects implemented with great success throughout the Caribbean countries, but it's that step up, it's that scaling up of these activities that require large investments. So we're poised, but we definitely need a lot more intervention on this aspect. So they have to be given greater priority. They have to have this long-term commitment to be able to obtain and maintain funding, technical assistance with respect to all the scientific innovations, the promotion of greater capacity development in our people, as well as making sure that the necessary policy environment for aquaculture and mariculture are there for this to flourish. Just a few examples in the region. Antigua and Barbuda, aquaculture production, mainly freshwater tilapia, grew exponentially and continues to grow. We recently had a CC for Fish project in 2019 on FAO and Jeff. And, it was focused mainly on the sustainable increasing of aquaculture productivity and the incomes of the associated aquaculture producers. Strengthen the capacity of aquaculture communities to adapt to the impacts of climate change, and of course, reduce or remove greenhouse gas emissions from our production systems. Also in Antigua, one local enterprise, Sea Springs Aqua Farm, launched the country's first freshwater prawn and crayfish farm using microbrachium and cherax. And they were able to satisfy the local demand while reducing the import bill. So in 2019, 111 metric tons of frozen shrimp and prawns were imported into Antigua. And this project aimed and actually did to reduce this level of import, which of course you will know the impact that a trade deficit has on the local economies in the Caribbean. In St. Vincent, have begun preparations for the expansion of the aquaculture sector. Again, this is a lot in part due to the decline of marine capture fisheries and those fish stocks. We have to innovate, we have to change, we have to make sure that we're introducing more ways of getting production from the areas. Sea moss production, which has caught on quite a bit in the Eastern Caribbean. This production has been identified as a priority given the increase in exports to North America, which saw over 99% increase in export value between 2017 and 2020. So it's 3 years, almost 100% increase in export value. The benefits of seaweed consumption, however, notwithstanding that capacity building and specific training development along the entire seaweed value chain is definitely required. And looking at these sustainable value chains and the seafood value chains is something that we're doing under the BECLMEs Plus project. In St. Lucia, I had the pleasure of taking these photos in St. Lucia back in August, and I was very impressed in terms of the growth of sea moss in St. Lucia, the sea moss production in St. Lucia. That has resulted in an increase in export of sea moss to Europe and Asia. At the end of 21, there was a 20% increase of sea moss production and revenue coming from sea moss production in just a 1 year period. So there's tremendous growth potential in that. And what I like about sea moss production, it can be very community linked. It does not have to only be large scale commercial aspects of things. So empowering local communities, increasing their livelihoods, increasing their opportunities is something that sea moss definitely offers here. I want to switch a little bit and go a little bit further afield and share some lessons from China through the FAO and a system that has been looked at for the last 15 years right now, integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. So, aquaculture has been seen, especially mariculture, has been seen to be very detrimental to the marine environment, a lot of, nutrients being lost, and of course, changes the chemistry of the ocean water that these facilities are in, which of course causes tremendous ecosystem changes. So integrated multi-trophic aquaculture is now a way to incorporate the lessons learned, what is coming out, and how that can be almost like a circular system of how we operate in the ocean environment. So we're learning from the ecology and introducing all of those concepts back into how we produce food and in the form of fish and other seafood products. So this is an important and useful means to support ecosystem-based management efforts. It involves farming 2 or more aquatic species from different trophic levels, different feeding levels. To put them together and they improve the efficiency, reducing waste, and provide ecosystem services. They improve sustainable production because you're now incorporating a more of an ecosystem approach to this, and it will generate both environmental and economic benefits. In China right now, integrated multi-trophic aquaculture accounts for 40% of the country's mariculture production. So, this is a schematic of how this system would look. You have your fish growing, you have, waste products, or whether it's leftover food or actually waste products from the fish themselves, go down to the bottom of the ocean system that they're in. And this is where you can have invertebrates feeding and benefiting and growing and reproducing from these. You can also have, bivalve culture happening in floating strings in the water column, making use of all of this detritus and other materials and plankton that's being promoted in the system. And you can also have seaweeds being produced as well, making sure that we are taking care of all that excessive nutrients that's coming from the fish production and incorporating them. So you no longer only have fish being a product, but you also have shellfish and you also have seaweeds that are benefiting from the entire thing, crustaceans, all of these things benefiting from one system. So coming back to the Eastern Caribbean, some of the risks that you have to consider for mariculture in Eastern Caribbean because of the nature of the islands. One of the benefits though, before we even talk about risks, is that our islands have more ocean space than land space. We're ocean states. You have tremendous space, and how we utilize this space and how we incorporate, marine spatial planning, figuring out where things should go and the competing interests to make sure that we can actually have a diversity of the investment opportunities operating in the same area. And they're not competing with each other. But the risks you have to consider with respect to mariculture, some of these risks can be mitigated, of course, is susceptibility to natural disasters, mainly tropical storms. And we have seen a rise in tropical storms over the last 10, 15 years. They're becoming more frequent, and they're, the peak hurricane season seem to be stretching even further beyond September and October. So we're seeing more frequent storms, we're seeing more frequency of higher level storms as well. There's an absence or inadequate insurance. market fairly existed for this type of venture due to the fact that it's an emerging enterprise, but we definitely need to, improve the level of insurance that we do have on this. Accessing financial resources, similar to insurance companies, lending institutions perceive a capital investment in the ocean as being very high risk. It is a greater risk than land-based systems, but some of this risk is also perceived risk. And of course, that does lead to higher insurance rates. Availability of suitable coastal areas for mariculture. Most of the prime areas are already utilized by tourism and port infrastructure, so there is a competition of space in the near shore areas of our islands. There is user conflict that you have to bear in mind as well from tourism and transport, tourism as well in terms of tourism and recreation. The sargassum phenomenon, which has reared its head and very, very dangerous and detrimental phenomenon going on, and it has been increasing. Luckily, we've been finding many uses for sargassum over the years, so that should help us to mitigate and manage that risk. We have to, of course, improve our legislative framework to promote aquaculture with the necessary regulations in place to make sure that we're actually doing well for the product, especially when it comes to the export market. Impact of non-indigenous marine species on ecosystems and the biosecurity aspect of things, and making sure that we're producing it in a competitively priced product so we can sell our product with much success, especially in the overseas markets. And just to close off, I want to touch a little bit on marine protected areas and other area-based conservation measures, or OECMs. Just in short, we are, been hearing about the 30 by 30 global target to protect 30% of our ocean space by 2030. That's about 5 years away right now, and we are in the Caribbean region. We're less than 10% in terms of marine protected areas coverage. This is something that offers the opportunity to invest more in, to do more in, because guess what? MPAs and OECMs work. They increased fish biomass. They've shown to show increase in habitat resilience, especially with storms coming in. The habitats are able to bounce back a lot faster. Improve communities and associated livelihoods. It's community driven and government supported, especially the ones that are very successful. You have that local community and the government working hand in hand to bring forward all of these benefits of these MPAs. Which many of our islands depend on tourism. Having an MPA or OECM does improve the tourism experience. It has been shown where tourists actually want to go to areas where protected areas are, because they do have better marine life, they do have better fish stocks, they do have better beaches, better coastal environments. So people are gravitating towards areas that are spending time and effort investing in marine protected areas. And this is definitely an avenue for investment for the Eastern Caribbean. So I just want to end right there. I got this video from a couple of weeks ago while diving and seeing this Nassau grouper was very happy for me to see this. And I wish that we can do more to see these kind of imagery all throughout the Caribbean in a lot more frequency. My contact card is there, and I do thank you for listening for the last 18 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Buddo. We do have one question, I believe, in the chat, and I think we would have touched on this, but perhaps you can expand. And that question is coming from Risha Aline, and she's asking if studies have been done on the views of cage culture, mariculture, and IMT in our waters competing with fisher folk and tourism, perhaps something like visual or pollution, etc. So just studies of mariculture and the sorts, especially in our competing waters with fisher folk and tourism.
There have been some small feasibility studies looked at for mariculture. It's very small scale. I can always share those with you, Marisha. I think we need to look at a more holistic view of the variety of species that we can do, the type of system that we can have, as well as looking at how we integrate this in a multi-trophic kind of operation. Um, you know, the perception of cage culture, and right now we have some pilot projects going on in the region. The perception of cage culture is that this will be detrimental to the marine environment, and it's grounded on the fact of how it used to be done before. We've made a lot of mistakes around the world in terms of cage culture because we're only focused on one species, and we weren't even very focused on the environment and other species that can be incorporated into it. So definitely room for more investment, more research needs to be done, but we have to do it in a right way. Good thing is that there are many lessons from around the world. We're not starting from zero, but we have to definitely fit it into the Caribbean perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Buddo. We also have a question in the Q&A section, recognizing Arthur Antone from Axiom, I believe. And his question is, can your agency help us with the economic feasibility study of aquaculture or aquaponics for sea moss in St. Lucia? Again, I believe you would have touched on some of this, but perhaps to provide some clarity there.
Yeah, I mean, the role of the CRFM is to provide one of the roles is provide a technical capacity and development. So this is definitely something that we can assist with. We have very good partnership with the FAO, for example, which is a plethora of technical expertise and guidance, and they've been very supportive of the Caribbean region in doing these kind of studies. So we can definitely help out where those things are concerned. And we have been doing work with St. Lucia in the past with respect to CMOS, and we'll continue to do so. Even on the aquaculture working group, we're spending a lot of time and effort looking at what can be done regionally on a policy as well as on a management and on the ground level support for these projects.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Buddo. We also have a question here from Miguel. What are the countries in the region where you see more potential for mariculture and or aquaculture?
All right, so the short answer is the countries with oceans, which is all of us, pretty much. We are blessed by having a lot of ocean space. We're also blessed, especially in Eastern Caribbean, where the deeper areas are not that far from land. You don't have to travel very far in terms of managing a cage culture system, going from land to tend to it. So, these are some of the benefits, especially for the Eastern Caribbean, that they do offer. I remember visiting with Grenada and seeing these folks taking out huge tunas just 100 meters away from from the land sometimes, because it does drop off into deep water very close. So there is tremendous opportunity along the Eastern Caribbean for mariculture.
Thanks again for that response. I do not believe I see any more questions in the chat or the Q&A section. However, I do have not so much a question, but more of a request. For those of you who may not be aware, Dr. Buddo and myself, we are with the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism, CRFM Secretariat, and we're doing work within the very scope of these discussions today on the blue economy. And of course, he's a project coordinator for our BEC LME Plus project. So the request would be, Dr. Buddo, is if you can perhaps share a little bit more within the context or the scope of the project, perhaps, some of the intentions for the project moving forward, since it's just in that, first year implementation phase, perhaps the project countries and some of the work that, the CRFM Secretariat is hoping to do in these countries, and maybe what has been accomplished in the short year thus far, just to get a sense of, what's happening in that BE space with respect to this project.
Sure. I mean, I touched on it very, very quickly at the start of the presentation. So, very quickly. But of course, this is of course, I mean, it's a very large, intricate project, multifaceted project spanning 6 countries around the region. We're looking at using marine spatial planning. which comes into very, that's where it's taking that holistic approach of what we can do and where can we do it, and how these also relate to other competing interests or other interests that we have. The main point of this is to make sure that we're protecting where we should be protecting. We can fish where we can fish or should fish. We're looking at maritime traffic. We're looking at all of these, all the, tourism interests, for example, and how these can relate to each other. We're also examining seafood value chains. What are the bottlenecks to value chains? How can we make them more profitable? How can we get that value all the way to the fishers that are harvesting these fish in an artisanal setting even? How can we maximize that kind of approach? How can we remove bottlenecks, optimizing these value chains? We're looking at marine protected areas. How can we help countries to enhance the the protection of their spaces, and also to increase the effectiveness of how we are managing these protected areas that we already have? How can we get that bang for the buck, so to speak, on what we're investing in marine protected areas? So the project does have those elements embedded into its operations, and every single year we're doing consultancies, we're doing trainings, we're doing activities, interventions in each of our project countries, and having them not just learn from us, but they're learning from each other and learning from others across the region as well. And we're sharing these outside of these 6 participating countries all throughout the region. So that, in a nutshell, or a bigger nutshell, is the BECLME Plus project. But at the end of the day, fisheries has been a little bit lagging behind in the blue economy space. And one of the reasons of forming this project is to bring back fisheries up to par with the blue economy conversation. So it can be on par with tourism, for example, which of course is well advanced in the blue economy conversation.
Indeed, and we had a segment, our first session this morning,
Yes,
with some
enjoy that.
specific insights, yes, on tourism and the way forward there, and a lot of the great studies and case studies and examples, as well as perspectives. Apparently, there were some questions in the lobby area, and I'll now take, we just have about 2 minutes left, so probably just a few brief responses to these questions from you, Dr. Buddo, before we wrap up the session. And one question is coming from Ramona. Does the present regulatory framework in each Caribbean country facilitate the expansion of mariculture? That's question 1. And coming in from Jean-Louis, if there is such a potential for aquaculture, why have there not been any significant private investment in this area so far? So
All right,
the
so
expansion of mariculture in terms of our regulatory framework and private investment.
okay, thank you for those questions. The policy framework is very country specific. As you can imagine, we're all sovereign states. We're at different stages of it. We just revised the Caribbean Common Fisheries Policy Framework, and that does speak a lot to advancement of mariculture and how countries across the region can push forward with their policy frameworks. So that will help to speed up in terms of the national policies to make sure that mariculture can be promoted in a much faster way, and you have that framework to make sure it grows well. So that is happening. So I'm very encouraged by countries, holding their hand up. We want more mariculture, but let's do it the right way. For the other question, if there's such a potential for aquaculture, why has there not been significant investment? That's a very complex question. I'm not sure if I'm capable of answering the entirety of that question, but I can tell you this. What I think the Caribbean needs help with is the moving from pilot projects to scalable large-scale projects. And some of the inhibitions from this is that almost like implementation inertia. Okay, we're almost at the point of implementing, but we're just cautiously implementing. Sometimes we just need to jump in a little bit better, a little bit harder, a little bit faster, and have the innovation driving us along with the investment right beside us. Oftentimes, sometimes the countries are looking at another country to start first and make sure it can work, and then we'll jump on. So maybe this is one of the inhibitions as well. But I think there's tremendous potential. I think we just need to get moving on it. And they always say, necessity is the mother of all invention. I think survival right now and food security should spur this innovation forward. Thank you.
Awesome. So thank you, Dr. Buddo. And I believe that does end this session. So thank you very much for your excellent presentation and valuable insights, especially on the role and importance of fisheries and aquaculture within the BE landscape, and as well to share with us at least some tidbits on the importance of the work under the BCLME Plus project. It's both timely and critical, and I look forward to the work that we continue to do at the Secretariat. All right. So next up, we do have our second country presentation of the day, and this would be from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, their investment promotion agency. After St. Vincent's country presentation, we will continue the sessions with the second thematic panel of the day, and this one would be on the theme of building partnerships for a sustainable blue economy. So again, thank you for joining this session with our guest speaker. And now we present the country presentation for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Don't forget to join our next session, which would be thematic panel 2. Thank you.